Hi, everybody. Welcome to Lurking for Legends. We're a live video cast, and each week we generally speak to different authors about their books. But today is a special episode in which we've invited three special guests. They're mystery authors. Anne Charles, Val Tobin, and Judy Penz Sheluk are here today, and they're going to co-read with us excerpts from their mystery novel. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So before we get on with the live reads, why don't we have you all three introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your books. We'll start with Anne.
Oh, hi. Wow. Anne Charles. Hi. Nice to meet you. I have 5 series that are ongoing that I write. And the one we're reading tonight is from the Deadwood Undertaker series, which is a Western historical mixed with supernatural thriller kind of whole jumble up. It's a lot of fun. And I also have the Deadwood Mystery Series and the Jackrabbit Junction Mystery Series, which is what's coming out next for me, the 6th book in that one. And Dig Site Mystery Series, which is archaeology mixed with some mystery and some supernatural. And then I have the Anne Charles Circus Mystery Series, which is a lot of fun. So that's kind of me in a nutshell at the moment.
Awesome. Now, how about you, Val? What have you got?
I'm Val Tobin, and hi, everyone. I have a master's degree in parapsychology, so I draw on that in a lot of my books. So I've got a number of, I write in a variety of genres, like there's sci-fi thrillers with supernatural elements. I've got paranormal romance, horror, romantic suspense, which incorporates the mystery because a number of my romantic suspense have murder mysteries in them. And I'm also writing a urban fantasy series. I was a software and web application developer for 10 years. I worked in the industry. And so I also draw on that in some, you'll see a developer or two in my books. And I write stories that are worth losing sleep over.
All right.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting. And Judy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the books that you write?
Yeah, so my name is Judy Penz Sheluk, and I feel like a bit of a slacker because I only have 2 series. And I have 3 books in each series that I'm actually just about to get book 4 of my Marketville series to my editor. It's due March 15th, so I'll be toying with that until like the 14th at like midnight before I send it in. So I have the Glass Dolphin Mystery Series, which is a cozy small town female women sleuths type of vibe. And then I have the Marketville Mystery Series, which are what I call cold case cozy. So they're not super cozy, and it's basically modern day protagonist investigator looking into murders or mysteries of the past. And that's my most popular series. And as a matter of fact, that Marketville Mystery box set just reached #1 on Kindle and Kobo. So that's pretty exciting for me. And I'm also the chair of Crime Writers of Canada, currently the current chair of Crime Writers of Canada. So that's me.
Nice.
Well, Richard, you're muted.
Thank you for that. This is our first official live read. Dave and I did one last month just to feel it out, and Christy and I did one last September, and they're a lot of fun, especially there's nothing nicer than listening to an author read from their own books. So, I'll never be a professional narrator, but I know a lot of people like listening to me when I actually read from my book. So I think it's special when the author actually reads from their work. So we look forward to reading your works with you today, Dave and I, and there's some stories where there'd be the 3, just Dave, myself, and the author, and I believe it's Anne's. When we get to Anne's book, all 5 of us are going to be chiming in, so that should be a lot of fun. So, yeah. But just to get us warmed up, we're going to start with Judy Penz Sheluk's book. We're going to be reading from Skeletons in the Attic, and if you can just set us up a little bit for that, Judy, before we start.
Sure. So that's book 1 in my Marketville Mystery Series, and this is actually the complete chapter 1. Basically, it's a story of Calamity Barnstable, goes by Callie, who meets with her father's lawyer for the reading of her father's will and finds out that she's inherited a property that she didn't know existed. So, and that's the mystery. Here we go. Let's have fun with it.
All right. Are you ready to go, Dave?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, so I will be the narrator in this book, in this reading, and Judy shall play the role of Calamity Callie Barnstable, and David is Leith Hampton. He's the Bay Street lawyer. So we're going to expect something from you, Dave, as a lawyer. Anyway, so I'll start here. So reading from Skeletons in the Attic. I'd been sitting in the reception area of Hampton and Associates for the better part of an hour when Leith Hampton finally charged in through the main door, his face flushed, a faint scent of sandalwood cologne wafting into the room. He held an overstuffed black briefcase in each hand and muttered an apology about a tough morning in court before barking out a flurry of instructions to a harried-looking associate. A tail wagging golden doodle appeared out of nowhere, and I realized the dog had been sleeping under the receptionist's desk. Leif nodded towards his office, a signal for me to go in and take a seat, then followed me, plopping both briefcases on his desk. He leaned down to pat the dog and pulled a biscuit out of his pants pocket.
That's a guess.
He said, not looking up.
My personal dog therapy. Therapy dog. Some days he's the only thing that keeps me sane.
I nodded, slipping into a chair closest to the window. It wasn't a particularly large office, and you definitely got some street noise. Horns honking, sirens, the occasional revving of a motorcycle engine, but it did offer a decent view of Bay Street. I watched as countless individuals of every possible size, shape, and color scurried along the street as cyclists, completely insane in my opinion, weaved their way in and out of the endless stream of gridlock traffic. In the heart of Toronto's financial district, everyone was always in a hurry, even if getting somewhere in a hurry wasn't possible. Atticus took up residence in a chair by the corner. Going by the blanket that covered his fabric, this was his regular seating arrangement. It amused me to think that Leif Hampton, a criminal defense attorney, known for his blistering cross-examinations and ruthless antics, both in and out of court, owned a golden doodle, let alone one that was allowed on the furniture. After a good 15 minutes, a half dozen consultations, and more harried-looking associates, and 3 telephone calls, all brief, Leith was apparently satisfied he'd sorted out what needed to be done and who was going to do it. He looked up at me, and I realized what made people gravitate towards him. It wasn't his 5'6" frame, mostly slender with the exception of a slight paunch, but his eyes. Eyes so blue, so intense in their gaze that they seemed electric. He opened a drawer and removed a manila file folder, along with a thin document bound in a pale blue cardboard. The words, Last Will and Testament of James David Barnstable, etched into black letter. Let's go into the boardroom. Oh, sorry.
Let's go into the boardroom. We won't be disturbed there.
Apparently, Atticus wasn't allowed in the boardroom because he jumped off the chair and trundled back to a spot under the reception desk, sighing loudly as he flumped his curly-haired body down onto the floor. I followed Leith into a long windowless room with a mahogany table surrounded by several black leather swivel chairs. I selected a seat across from him and waited. Leith placed the will in front of him, soothing an invisible crease with a well-manicured hand, his nails showing evidence of vigorous buffing. I wondered what kind of man went in for a man petty. I was surmising on the petty and decided it was the kind of man who billed his services out for $500 an hour. Unlike his office, which had a desk stacked high with paperwork, a saltwater aquarium, and walls covered with richly embroidered tapestries, the boardroom was devoid of clutter or ornamentation. The sole exception was a framed photograph of an attractive blue-eyed blonde, mid to late 20s. She had her arms wrapped possessively around 2 fair-haired children, ages about 3 and 5. Mrs. Leith Hampton the 4th, I assumed, or possibly the 5th. I'd lost count. Not that it mattered. My business here had nothing to do with the Hamptons' latest trophy wife or their gap-toothed offspring. I was here for the reading of my father's last will and testament, an event I would have been far happier not attending for a good many years to come. Unfortunately, a faulty safety harness hadn't stopped his fall from the 30th floor of a condo under construction. The fact that a criminal defense attorney of Leith's reputation had drawn up the will was an indication of just how long the two men had been friends. Leith cleared his throat and stared at me with those intense blue eyes.
Are you sure you're ready, Calamity? I know how close you were to your father.
I flinched at the Calamity. Folks called me Callie, or they didn't call me at all. Only my dad had been allowed to call me Calamity, and even then, only when he was seriously annoyed with me, and never in public. It was a deal we'd made back in elementary school. Kids can be cruel enough without the added incentive of a name like Calamity. As for being ready, I've been ready for the past 90 plus minutes. I've been ready since I first got the call telling me my father had been involved in an unfortunate occupational accident. That's how the detached voice on the other end of the phone had put it. An unfortunate occupational accident. I knew at some point I'd have to face the fact that my dad wasn't coming back, that would never again argue over politics or share a laugh while watching an episode of The Big Bang Theory. Knew that one day I'd sit down and have a good long cry, but right now wasn't the time, and this certainly wasn't the place. I'd long ago learned to store my feelings into carefully constructed compartments. I leveled Leith with a dry-eyed stare and nodded.
I'm ready.
Leith opened the file and began to read.
I, James David Barnstable, hereby declare that this is my last will and testament, and that I hereby revoke, cancel, and annul all wills and codicils previously made by me either jointly or severally. I declare that I am of legal age to make this will and of sound mind, and that this last will and testament expresses my wishes without undue influence or duress. I bequeath the whole of my estate, property, and effects to my daughter Calamity Doris Barnstable.
I nodded and tried to tune out the monotony of the will's legalese. I had expected no more and no less. I was the only child of two only children, and my mother had long ago left my dad and left me to fend for ourselves. Not that the whole of his estate would amount to much. Some well-worn furniture, a few mismatched dishes, and a small stack of dog-eared books, mostly Clive Cussler and Michael Connolly, with the occasional John Sandford tossed in for good measure. The inheritance would mean clearing out my father's two-bedroom townhouse, a dreary example of 1970s architecture mired in the bowels of outer suburbia. I thought about my crammed studio apartment in downtown Toronto and knew that most of his belongings would wind up at the local Salvation Army or Restore. That thought made me sad.
There is one provision,
Lee said, dragging me out of my reverie.
Your father wants you to move into the house in Marketville.
I sat up straighter and looked Leith in the eye. Clearly, I missed something important when I zoned out.
What house in Marketville?
Leith let out a theatrical courtroom sigh, well practiced, but over the top for his audience of one.
You haven't really been listening, have you, Calamity?
I was forced to admit I had not, although he now had my undivided attention. Marketville was a commuter community about an hour north of Toronto, the sort of town where families with two kids, a collie, and a cat moved to looking for a bigger house, a better school, and soccer fields. It didn't sound much like me or my father.
You're saying my father owned a house in Marketville? I don't understand. Why didn't he live there?
Leith shrugged.
It seems he couldn't bear to part with it, and he couldn't stand living in it. He's been renting it out since 1986.
The year my mother had left. I'd been 6. I tried to remember a house in Marketville. Nothing came to mind. Even my memories of my mother were vague.
The house has gone through some hard times, what with tenants coming and going over the years.
Leith continued.
I've done my best to manage the property for a modest monthly maintenance fee, but not living nearby.
He colored slightly, and I wondered just how modest that fee had been. I glanced back at the photo of his vibrant young family and suspected such treasures did not come cheap. There was probably alimony for the other trophy wives as well. I decided to let it go. My father had trusted him. that had to be enough.
So you're saying I've inherited a fixer-upper?
I suppose you could put it that way, although your father had recently hired a company to make some basic improvements when the last tenant moved out.
He flipped through his notes in the folder.
Royce Contracting and Property Management. I gather the owner of the company, Royce Ashford, lives next door, but I'm not sure much, if anything, has been done to the house yet. Naturally, all work would have stopped following your father's death.
You said he wanted me to move into the house. When was he going to tell me?
I think the initial plan was that your father was going to move back in there. But of course, now
that he's dead, you think he wanted me to move there?
Actually, it's more than wanted, Calamity. It's a provision of the will that you move into 16 Snapdragon Circle for a period of 1 year. After that time, you're free to do what you wish with it. Go back to renting it, continue to live there, or sell it.
And if I decide to sell it?
Homes in that area of Marketville typically sell quickly and for a decent price. Certainly several times your parents' original investment back in 1979. You'd have to put in some elbow grease, not to mention some basic renovations, but your father left you some money for that as well.
He had money set aside, enough for renovations?
I thought about the shabby townhouse, the threadbare carpets, the flannel sheet covering holes in the fabric of the ancient olive green brocade sofa. I always thought my dad was frugal because he had to be. It never occurred to me he was squirreling away money to fix up a house I didn't even know existed.
About $100,000, although only half of that is allocated to renovation. The balance of the $50,000 would be paid to you in weekly installments while you lived there, rent-free. Certainly enough for you to take a year off work and fulfill the other requirement.
$50,000. Almost twice what I made in a single year at my call center job at the bank. Leaving there would definitely not be a hardship. And my month-to-month lease would be easy enough to break with 30 days notice.
What's the other requirement?
Leith leaned back in his chair and let out another one of his theatrical sighs. I got the impression he didn't really approve of the condition.
Your father wants you to find out who murdered your mother, and he believes the clues may be hidden in the Marketville house.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, awesome. That was good. I was right near the end of that scene when he leaned back in the chair. I thought we might see David Lewis come off the screen. That was awesome.
Yay, that was great.
That was fun. I love the sound effects.
Yes. So that was the end of that. And do you want to say anything else about the story, Judy, before we move on?
No, I mean it's a story of Callie searching for clues into her mother's disappearance 30 years earlier, and it leads her to all sorts of skeletons in her family's past that she has to confront. So yeah, that's basically it. So she finds out a lot of things that she'd never been aware of, and one might maybe have been happier not knowing, but there wouldn't have been a book then. And the other kind of fun thing is that opening scene is loosely based on my husband and I went to see our lawyer in Newmarket, which is where Marketville is based, and he was late, and he does have a golden doodle, though his golden doodle was named Scout, and he is kind of short with a paunch and these great blue eyes. But anyway, he was late coming in from court, so while my husband was reading like back issues of a magazine, I started like thinking, what if I was here for this? What if I was here for that? What if there was this? And so I started writing all these notes down, but I never did credit my lawyer in the book because I figured he might bill me for it.
That's great. So we're going to move on now to Val Tobin. And Val, we'll get you to set up your story. And the excerpt is from a story called You Again.
Yes. This is a romantic suspense with murder mystery and fraud. So after her boss assigns Ellen Hadigan to her ex-boyfriend Gabriel Duncan's account, Ellen balks at that and considers refusing the assignment. And she believes he abandoned her, and he believes she rejected him. So there's definitely, issues between the two of them. And Gabriel has invited her to a bar to discuss the job over what Ellen thinks will be dinner.
Awesome. So in this scene, I will be the narrator again, and Val will be Ellen, and Dave will be Gabriel. Is it Gabriel or Gabriel?
Gabriel.
Gabriel. All right.
Do I need a trumpet?
What's that?
Do I need a trumpet?
A trumpet. Why do you need a trumpet?
Angel Gabriel.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anyone's going to confuse you for an angel, Dave.
I don't think so.
Maybe Hillary will, but. Okay, so I will just, I will start. And again, the narrator starts. So it's at 5 o'clock, Ellen walked into the Foundation Saloon. When she gave her name, the hostess led her to a table with a booth near the back of the dining room. Gabriel was already there, a half-empty stein of beer in front of him.
Got an early start?
She asked. The hostess set a menu down in front of Ellen, who took a seat across from him. He waited for the hostess to leave, and then his expression serious, his tone dark, he said,
"We have a problem."
She smiled, a cross between a smirk and amusement.
You being dramatic?
No, you ever hear of Francesca Newton?
I trained her on the financial software BRI uses. She replaced me as controller when I quit.
He leaned toward her and said in a low voice,
"She's dead."
Cold dread washed over Ellen.
What do you mean dead?
When I got to the BRI offices today, a detective was there. He told me her husband found her body in their apartment. Looks like suicide, but the police are investigating and treating it as a suspicious death.
I'm sorry to hear that. She seemed like a nice woman, young. What a waste. I'm sure it's just a routine investigation. They do that for any death that isn't natural, don't they?
And why would this be a problem for her? Or, more specifically, them? There was no them.
He said there were indications she was murdered.
The oxygen in the room seemed to vanish, and Ellen gasped.
What indications?
He wouldn't tell me, but if they think someone killed her, they'll likely have evidence.
She nodded, unable to speak. Francesca had been a pretty woman in her late 20s. She'd been so full of life. Yes, that was a cliche, but in Francesca's case, it was an accurate description. The young woman had been eager to start the new job and had learned the software quickly. Ellen had been positive she'd work out well.
What could have happened?
She said aloud, though she spoke more to herself than to Gabriel. He replied anyway.
I don't know.
She recalled his comment at the start of the conversation.
Why is this a problem for us?
The publicity might be bad for him, but she'd left that company too long ago for anyone to associate her with it, unless she took over their books, as Carol had assigned her to do. She needed to clear this up immediately.
It won't be a problem for me. I'm not taking the account. Are you really thinking only of the bad press over this? A woman died. She either killed herself or someone murdered her. Isn't that more important than what the media might say about you over it?
Anger flared in his eyes, and he scowled.
That's not where my mind went. How could you think that?
Why wouldn't I think that? I don't know you anymore. What else is there?
Don't you think it's strange that such a successful company went downhill after you left?
Before she could respond, the server, a perky, petite redhead with braids and freckles, arrived to take Ellen's drink order. Deciding she needed one, she ordered a glass of red wine, the 9-ounce rather than the 6-ounce option. When the woman left, Ellen picked up the menu. She didn't feel hungry, but food was her one go-to coping mechanism. one of her go-to coping mechanisms, and the news of what could be the murder of an acquaintance had definitely stressed her.
Want to order dinner?
When he remained silent, she peeked up from the menu. He stared at her, his lips pressed together.
What's wrong?
Did he think her callous for wanting to order food?
I stress eat, Gabe. I'm not heartless.
He set his palms on the table, bracketing his mug of beer.
It's not that. I have to leave soon. I'm going somewhere else for dinner.
Her whole body went cold.
You have a date on a Thursday.
Yes, one I made 2 weeks ago. I'm sort of seeing someone.
Sort of.
Francesca's death popped into her head, and she waved a hand at him.
Never mind. I don't care. You're free to see whomever you want and do whatever you want with her. What matters is what happened to Fran.
He gave her a slow nod.
Right. So, answer my question.
What question?
The company was prosperous. They had substantial revenues. Still do, from what I can tell. Their problems started after you left.
She gasped.
You pinning that on Fran? Is that why you think she killed herself?
Or was murdered.
Ellen brushed a hand through her hair, pulling errant strands off her face. The server arrived with their wine and set it in front of her.
I'll take an order of sweet potato fries. Nothing for him.
She added with a nod in Gabriel's direction. After the redhead left again, Gabriel checked the time on his phone.
I have to go. Drinks and your food are on me. I'll settle the tab on my way out. Order anything else you want. They'll put it on my card.
He gazed at her contemplatively for a moment.
Don't use it to get revenge on me.
Wow. Don't worry. I can pay for my own food.
That was a joke, Ellen. Can we please forget the past? I'm sorry for what happened. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, help me with BRI. Take on the account. Maybe together we can figure out if anything in the records could have triggered her death, whether by her own hand or someone else's.
I don't know. What I'll do is think about it tonight and give you an answer in the morning. If I decide we shouldn't work together, I'll tell Carol to give it to someone else.
But you know the company already. If anyone can spot inconsistencies or anything that's not right, you can.
You think she was deliberately cooking the books?
How would I know? It could be anything. You'd find the issue faster than anyone else. Will you do it?
She pictured herself working with Gabriel, perhaps for weeks. She'd see or talk to him every day, given the unusual situation. But he was correct. She'd find errors faster than anyone else. Plus, if it helped the police catch a killer or helped them understand why Francesca killed herself, didn't Ellen owe it to everyone to do anything she could to figure it out? Reluctantly, she said,
On one condition. When I've post-mortem the files, when I've cleaned them up and everything's in order, you turn the account over to someone else.
No problem.
He blurted. His expression told her he thought by that point she'd change her mind. Ellen swore to herself she wouldn't. She'd give him no choice but to put someone else on the account. By the time this was over, she'd find another job and remove herself from Gabriel's life, the way he had removed himself from hers 3 years ago. She reached out her hand.
Deal.
They shook on it, and he walked away, her gaze following him out of sight.
Nice.
Nice job.
Yay.
It really sounds interesting.
Do you want to add anything about that, Val?
Not really. It's just what it sounds like, second chance romantic suspense with murder and fraud.
That's awesome.
Every day, yeah.
And I'm just going to pull up our last book here. And if Anne, if you want to set us up.
Sure. So this is from book 3 in the Deadwood Undertakers series. This is a series I forgot to mention that I co-write with my husband. So we have a lot of fun putting this together. And it's from the chapter 6 of book 3, Can't Write Around It. So we're a little bit into the story. And this book takes place in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, 1876. So we're back a little bit in time. I'm looking forward to hearing you guys read the lines. This should be pretty fun. Do you have any horses to whinny or anything like that for sound effects? This will be fun.
Knew if I could get through a cowboy hat.
Oh, I was going to wear my oh, you know what I found just sitting next to me? All right, let's put this on.
All right.
It's my husband's, so this works perfectly. This scene starts with Jack Rabbit Fields, he goes by Rabbit, and Boone McCreary in the loft of a livery building in Deadwood. Rabbit is practicing his knife throwing skills as they wait for Hank to show up, who will be joining Boone for a freight wagon trip to a neighboring town. Rabbit is anxious about Boone and Hank and the hazards along the trail. And the scene continues after Boone and Hank leave with Rabbit and Clementine. They are working on building onto the livery, and Clementine wants to pay a visit to a local cemetery at night because her 2 grave diggers have reported strange things happening in a graveyard at the graveyard. We're going to be in Rabbit's point of view, and let me just do a really quick Rabbit, like I said, early 30s, freighter cowboy from way back when, is same as Boone, and they've known each other since they were little kids. They grew up together. We've got Uncle Mort, who Judy's playing for us, and he is a ghost who's the boy's uncle. So he kind of comes and goes. And we have Clementine, who I mentioned. Now, she is late 20s. She's the Undertaker in the Deadwood Undertaker series. And she's a hired killer who was raised in Norway, but kind of has been in the States, so she's her accent isn't super strong because she has to blend in as a killer, and that is going to be played by Val, and I'm going to play Hank, who is a 40s-ish jack of all trades, and he's Clementine's assistant. He just has a little line, and I'm going to narrate this time as well. So are you guys all ready to go?
We are.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, can't write around it. A flurry of yipping barks erupted from below in the livery.
Take caught a rat,
Rabbit said, starting the guessing game, which was something he and Boone had done since they were kids. Boone shook his head.
I think it's Hank.
Nope, bark is wrong. It's a rat, or a customer.
Hank.
Boone insisted.
Nope.
Hilsen,
A familiar voice called out in a Norwegian greeting.
are you boys in here?
Clementine.
Boone said, and knocked on the table with his fist was a gavel.
I knew it.
You said Hank.
Rabbit hadn't even heard the door open.
I'm pretty sure I said Clementine.
Boone cupped his hand to his mouth and hollered,
Up here.
Rabbit never got tired of watching Clementine bound up the steep stairs into the loft, skipping every other step with her long, strong legs. Even though they were covered in canvas pants, those legs were a sight. Hell, he didn't usually see the shape of a lady's leg above the ankle most days. Long skirts were overly efficient at hiding anything north of the toes. Tinker bounded up the steps behind her.
Hello, gentlemen.
Clementine said as she crested the last step. She pulled off her thick wool hat and shook out her hair. She looked at the throwing knives on the floor in front of a target sack, and then at Rabbit, her gray eyes sparkling. He swore under his breath. Of course she had to see those.
I was trying something new, like twist this way and then flip. It's quicker if...
He trailed off, demonstrating with his hand. He hustled over and picked up the knives and slipped them into the sheaths he'd tooled from a worn pair of leather chaps that a miner had left behind in the livery. He'd strapped the sheaths to his belt, carrying 5 knives in all, 2 on each side surrounding his guns, and another sheathed horizontally along the back of his belt. He was proud of that last one. That particular sheath had taken him longer than the others, but he could now carry one knife completely hidden under his shirt tails or coat, and an underhand throw would have it in the air flying at a target at least as quickly as the other knives. Clementine eyed him for a moment, and then she turned to Boone.
I thought you were heading to Queen City today.
Boone scowled toward the window.
If Hank doesn't get back here pronto, I'm not going anywhere.
He's a nervous Nelly.
Rabbit told her and drew a knife. He began flipping it end over end, catching it by the blade. He knew he shouldn't poke Boone right now, but he was just too much fun to tease. Truth be told, Uncle Mort was right. Rabbit was a little apprehensive himself. Too many dangerous men and beasts in these parts. Rabbit had made sure the wagons and teams would give Boone no trouble, but he couldn't control what happened on the trail any more than his compadre could. Boone sat back and crossed his arms.
If it comes down to you saving me, you big strapping man, I've got a concern or two judging by the way you throw those blades.
You shouldn't poke the badger,
Uncle Mort said to Rabbit.
He might bite you. You know Boone's fretting this trip. It's his way.
Uncle Mort walked through Clementine and hovered next to Boone.
Don't do that.
Rabbit shuddered.
I'm not accustomed enough yet.
He wished his uncle would act a little more like the living. It was unnerving when he float walked through a floor, or a wall, or through people. Uncle Mort sank down through the floor.
Don't do what?
Clementine arched one brow at him.
He thinks he's talking to Uncle Morton.
Boone craned his neck, right then left.
Don't see him, though. So, matter of fact, I don't think anyone has seen or heard from Uncle Morton for quite a while, except, and of course, Mr. Phenomenal here.
All right, where's Hank, damn it?
Rabbit was eager to turn the conversation away from his uncle.
It's time for you to mosey, Booney. Getting late.
Almost too late, darn it.
Boone pulled out the chair next to him and offered it to Clementine.
Yeah, have a seat. What brings you to our humble livery, Miss Johansson?
She dropped into the chair, reaching for the coffee pot and Boone's empty cup.
There is a serious lack of diversion at the pyre currently.
She poured some coffee into the cup.
So I thought I might lend a hand with the hotel foundation.
Boone sat forward, resting his elbows on the table. His gaze followed the cup all the way up to her lips, seeming to get stuck there.
Rabbit could probably use your help while Hank and I are gone,
he said, watching her take a sip as if he'd never seen a woman drink before.
The foundation is about done, but we need to get the floor joists away from the street before they get misappropriated.
Leaning on the back of the chair across from Boone, Rabbit asked her,
Can you lift floor joists?
She set the coffee cup down.
I can probably help some.
She raised her arms like a strong man at the circus, growling and baring her teeth as she flexed. Nice. Rabbit reached out and squeezed her upper arm through her thick coat, grinning at Boone.
Would you look at that? Pleasing to the eyes and serviceable too.
Boone laughed, picking up the shared coffee cup.
I'd hire her on the spot, no questions asked.
He toasted Clementine before taking a swallow. Her cheeks darkened and she lowered her arms.
As if she'd give you a choice, Booney.
Clementine Johansson was probably the most capable woman Rabbit had ever met. Boone still seemed overly fixated on her face at the moment. The livery door banged open. Another flurry of yips echoed through the building. Boondog, Hank hollered above Tink's racket. Let's skin them wagons. Time's a-wasting.
I've been waiting for you, Hank.
Boone called out.
Not the other way around.
He set the coffee cup down and stood, grabbing his lucky hat off the back of the chair next to him.
I'm finally off. You two don't break yourselves.
He jammed his hat on his head, sparing Clementine a glance before focusing on Rabbit.
We'll be back tomorrow, so leave the real heavy stuff till then.
Okay, Pa.
Rabbit said as Boone picked up the haversack full of fatback biscuits and jerky.
Forceful, isn't he?
Clementine leaned back in her chair, watching Boone with a small smile on her lips.
Yeah, but he's got a sensitive nature about him.
Rabbit stepped in front of Boone, hitting him with a hard stare.
Listen, the 10 gauge and box of shells are under the seat on your rig. Hank's got my sharps under his seat.
Good.
Rabbit brushed off Boone's shoulders and tugged on the lapels of his coat, same as Uncle Mort used to do to both of them before they'd headed off on a freight run.
Drop that load and hightail it if you find trouble.
Boone nodded once.
We'll be okay. I'll see you both tomorrow.
After one last wave in Clementine's direction, he headed down the steps.
Like I said before,
Uncle Mort said, popping back up through the floor.
he'll be fine.
Rabbit cursed.
Won't you just use the stairs like everybody else?
I don't need to.
Uncle Mort pretended to sit in the chair Boone had vacated, but ended up floating a few inches above it.
And for your information, boy, I'm coming to enjoy my freedom from earthly encumbrances.
He eyed Clementine, one bushy eyebrow lifted.
You know, I do believe this looker could entice a man to plow through a field of stumps.
Uncle Mort,
Rabbit warned as his uncle reached toward her hair. He wiggled his eyebrows at Rabbit.
Let's put her to work.
Several hours later, as the sun was slipping behind the ridge, Rabbit lowered his tired backside onto the end of a wagon.
let's take a break.
They'd moved and stacked lumber throughout the afternoon, dealing with livery customers in between. Clementine had kept up with him every step of the way. In fact, if he was honest with himself, he was puffing a little harder than she was. She sat down beside him.
I've been thinking, Jack.
Why don't you call me Rabbit?
Because that's Boone's name for you. Besides, I like Jack better. Now listen, Lingengart told me something today that's got me preoccupied.
The two gravediggers had ended up riding along with Hank and Boone to Queen City, which made Rabbit a little less restless about the run.
What's that?
He asked, and then listened with rapt attention as Clementine told him about the goings-on in the cemetery. When she finished, he sat back with a frown.
So you think they might be making these dang beasties?
The notion of dead folks walking around had him shivering for more reasons than the evening chills setting in.
That's one strong possibility.
Or using them for food?
Or both.
That's vile.
Yep.
Clementine blew out a breath.
Since the bodies were taken from the pyre, I have to suspect Masterson as well.
You boss? Have you talked to Miss Hildegard about it? I guess she's a madam, not a miss.
He corrected himself. Hildegard was Clementine's confidant. She was also the owner of the Dove, a high-class brothel and bathhouse that Rabbit wouldn't mind warming up in later tonight if he weren't the one in charge of watching the livery. Hildegard's place was the best-smelling establishment in Deadwood, what with the mouth-watering aromas of roast beef and bread cooked up by the crazy Russians in the kitchen and the sweet scent of flowers everywhere else. Not to mention Hildegard had some of the prettiest doves Rabbit had ever seen. Nice girls, too, with fine teeth.
Not yet.
Clementine sniffed a couple of times, dabbing her nose with a handkerchief.
There's something I want to check on first.
You know, I couldn't tell you which is worse.
Rabbit stared down at his wet gloves. The leather was stiffening in the cold.
Dead bodies used as food or dead bodies walking around?
In the past, he would have had trouble believing what she was saying, but what with the things he'd seen in the hills, well, he was beginning to take a few things on faith.
I need to know what's going on out there in Ingleside,
she said.
I need to head over there.
Rabbit stared at her. Was she saying...
I'm going tonight.
Shit.
To the boneyard tonight? At night?
She nodded.
Lingengart said that's when the strange things have been happening.
Wait. I decided. Dead people walking around is worse.
Ha! Agreed.
Rabbit lowered his head.
You're right, I suppose. Best way is to go take a look-see.
He glanced her way.
Don't suppose you'd be willing to wait until Boone and Hank get back?
He had a pretty good idea what her answer would be, but it was worth a shot.
I can handle it.
She opened her canteen.
Or should I say, we can handle it.
She raised her brows at him as she brought the canteen up to her mouth. Yep, That's what he thought she'd say. He stared back at her, straight-faced.
If you're waiting on a reaction from me, I haven't decided the best way to display my opposition to that plan.
That's it. Thank you, guys. That was
That was
fun.
very
Good
good.
job. That was great.
I think
So-
Dave nailed the cowboy character there.
That was fun.
Go ahead, Ann.
No, I was just going to say, regarding this, we're actually working on book 4 at the moment, with the plans for it to be out sometime this summer. And it's The Backside of Hades. Like I said, this was book 3, and there's 2 books in front of it. And the first one's Life at the Coffin Joint, and that is going for sale for 99 cents, the ebook, from about March 13th through the end of the month, so about April 2nd. So if you're interested in the series, it's a big sale we're having on that first one.
Well, that's awesome. And that's what I was going to ask you three before we sign off tonight. First, thank you all for being here and doing this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
And
Thanks for having us.
You guys did it wonderful. You're most welcome. We
Blast.
enjoyed having you.
Yeah.
But so, Ann, tell us, since you were on last, tell us a little bit more about what's coming up in the Ann Charles universe, and where we can find your stuff.
So, like I said, the 4th book in this series is coming out, and you can find all my books at www.anncharles.com. And I also, at the same time, I'm working on book 6 in my Jackrabbit Junction series called Twisty Tortoise Tussles. And that one will also be out this summer. We're writing at the same time, so we're trying to see who's closer to the end sooner, and then we'll see which one comes out first, depending on that. So we got a busy summer with a couple releases of full-length great fun
Twisty
books.
what?
What was that?
Twisty what?
It's like delayed. It's just a Twisty Tortoise Tussles.
Wow,
Okay.
that does sound like a drinking game.
Yes, I know, right? Every time you need to, yeah, we could have fun with that.
And thank you for having the wine in the scene, so I could.
Yeah, really, Val.
And how about you, Val? What's new or what's coming up in the Val Tobin universe, and where can we find your stuff?
Well, You Again, which is what we did the reading from, and all my other books, you can look them up at www.valtobin.com. That's the easiest way to find them. They're all on Amazon, and most of them are distributed wide. And currently I am working on book 3 of an urban fantasy series. It's up for pre-order, but I just finished the first draft, so it's going exclusive to Amazon. This series is in Kindle Unlimited, and each book in the series is based on a different card from the Tarot's major arcana. So it starts from the Fool, which is the Fool's Journey, and
I'm here.
and unless I die first, I might get all 22 cards done.
That's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say that leaves you a lot of books to write.
Yeah, well, there's 22 cards in the Tarot's major arcana, and so the first 2 are out. So the Fool and the Magician are out. I'm working on the High Priestess, and then book 4 will be the Empress, and then going on from there.
Cool.
Here I'm muted again. Here I'm the host, and I mute myself all the time. No, that's awesome, Val. Thank you. Thank you for joining us again tonight. And Judy Penz Sheluk, what's new in your universe, and what have you got coming up, and where can we find you?
So in the shameless self-promotion, if you're in Canada, the UK, or Australia, the box set of the Marketville series is on for 99 cents from $9.99 because I got a BookBub promo, and that's the way it works. So that's on until March 24th. If you're in the US, it's $9.99. So not as exciting for you, but still a big deal. And what's interesting is that that series really does feature tarot throughout. And as a matter of fact, the 3rd book in the series is called A Fool's Journey, because some people believe that the major arcana is actually the Fool's Journey. And so it really, it's funny how that we both have the tarot thing going on. And so that one, yeah, book 4, it should be coming out this fall. And I'm also working on a standalone suspense, but that's probably like next year sort of thing. And I also have 3 multi-author anthologies out, and which I edit, and I'm planning on doing a call out for a 4th one this fall for people to submit for consideration. So if you want to find out more, you can find me at www.judypenzsheluk.com. And if you sign up for my newsletter or follow my blog, you'll find out when these things happen. So thanks.
Can I add one more thing, because Judy and Val did such a great job that I didn't realize. The 99 cents is international as well as US. So that's just one thing, so that I forgot to mention that. And there was something else, but never mind. We'll just stay with that for now. That's all I can remember.
No worries. And if you want to pop in later, you can always add that to the chat as well. So
thank you.
Our other co-host, Chrissy Stratos, she's been awesome enough to put those all your links down. I keep trying to do that, and I don't write it down. I'm thinking I'm going to screw it up, so I don't bother putting it. But Christy's on the ball, so thank you, Christy, for doing that.
Thanks, Christy.
We appreciate it. So again, thank you guys for being here. And Dave, is there anything new and exciting you want to say before we sign off?
The news for me is that I now have an actual release date for Collection Dawn,
Nice.
which will be June the 7th. That's the 2nd book in the Logan Two Feathers series. And it is currently up on pre-order for anybody who desperately wants to pre-order it for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe we'll have a launch date together. I'm thinking of launching Windwalker in June, but it's not set in stone yet. So June 7th, I keep that in mind. That's and I just got new covers for the Legend of the Lurker series. So anyone's following me on Facebook, you probably
they look great.
yeah. So I was working with it was an artist. I think she's in somewhere in the Philippines, and so I think she's 11 hours or 13 hours on the other side of here. So when I get up in the morning, she's going to bed, and vice versa. But we've been able to make it work for all 3 covers. She's been amazing to work with. So if you're ever looking for an awesome cover artist, let me know, and I'll hook you up with her. So again, thank you for being here, and hopefully we'll get you back on and do it again at some point in the future when we decide to do the mystery theme again. And next week's guest will be J.F. Gerard. Gerard's books have been described as East meets West speculative fiction. They combine fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. J.F. is an award-winning speculative. I can't say that word. That's why I'm an author. I'm not a speaker. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of fiction.
Speculative.
Thank you, Dave. That's why I got you here. You're the brain. Editor and publisher. She is the president of Dark Helix Press, co-president for the Canadian Authors Association Toronto branch, and deputy editor of Rice Paper Magazine. So she'll be an awesome guest to have on, and we can pick her brain about a lot of stuff, especially as far as the Canadian bent anyway. So thank you all for being here again. And CJ saying it's the wine that's doing it to me. And no, that's just my natural predilection for not being able to speak properly. So. Thank you again. I enjoyed listening to your stories, and I really enjoyed partaking.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you to our sound man, Dave. Those sound effects are great. So until the next week, take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye.